Hello, I am Barry Cooper. I am one half of Cooper and Cary Have Words. 4,000 miles away is my friend James Cary, who is currently situated in Yeovil, Somerset. How on earth are you, James?
I am in Yeovil, Somerset. The sign says so, and the sign never lies.
That's right.
But yeah, it's great to be here. I'm sad that you're back in Florida and that we never managed to meet whilst you were in this country and less than 100 miles away from me. But there we go. Such is life. The divine comedy continues.
That's right. And I feel on this episode in particular, we need to not waggle on the tea, because that piece of priceless wisdom has been given to us by the man that we are interviewing today. And we've tried to stick to it. Good friend of the show, Brant Hansen. Brant, welcome.
Thank you. Do you guys feel like it would ruin it all if you guys actually met? Like that would just ruin everything? Like the whole vibe?
There's a space-time continuum risk involved, to be honest. Yeah, I do.
Right.
Yeah, three of us in one room.
Or would it just be so disillusioning? Yeah. You're just like, no, I can't go on.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
You're a bit shorter than I thought you were. You know, that kind of thing.
That's what normally happens. People turn out to be shorter.
We did actually get some time in a room together at the end of last year. Was it November sometime?
Yeah.
And we go back and dig out that episode if you haven't seen it, because you do get to see James and I looking slightly perplexed in each other's company. But it was great.
And to be fair, when we we didn't even know we were recording an episode. That was something for Speak Life, wasn't it? So in a way, it was just
right.
Yeah. So ironically, the only time we recorded an episode together in the same room, we didn't realise we were doing it. So that seems about right. We're waggling. We're continuing to waggle. Stop waggling. Why are we having this conversation?
Any excuse to get Brant on the show, to be honest. But Brant has got a new book out, and it is. I think it's out now. Is it available in the US, or is it very soon?
It comes out March 29, so it depends on when it's. So you can pre-order it, and I'd love it if you would.
Please do. Order 7, order thousands, and build a fort with them, to use one of Brant's comments in this new book. What is the point of this book, Brant? Why did you want to write the men we need?
Well, I just feel like we've deconstructed masculinity pretty well, and it's needed, and like that's a very good thing. But I don't see many visions being put forth for what's the unifying theory of if there is a distinct masculinity. Like, and I appreciate the books that are like, hey, we shouldn't be John Wayning Jesus and that sort of stuff. It's totally true. But I'm left, okay, well, what's the vision then? Tell us what is the distinct vision for what God wants of men? Is there one? And so I'm taking a shot at it. And I think it's easier, honestly, as you guys know, it's easier to deconstruct than it is to actually construct something. So that's what I'm trying to do now.
It sounds like you were kind of, because I listened to the Brant and Sherry Oddcast. It sounds like Sherry kind of bullied you into actually writing this book. And
she totally did.
But because saying that basically guys were coming up to you. I know you joke about this on the Oddcast, that guys come up to you and talk about how to be smooth and that kind of thing. But guys do come up to you and ask you advice and stuff. I mean, how does that happen? And what do you say? And, you know, obviously you've written this book to answer that question, but were you finding that happening a lot?
Yeah, and I think it's because I'm not the outdoorsy guy like that you would typically think would write this sort of thing. So I relate to a lot of guys that are more bookish, more maybe analytical in nature, or nerdy would be another way to put it, like Lord of the Rings fans, that kind of stuff. And they're gamers too, like big time gamers, strategy games or video or whatever. Like I think they approach me because they see something that they instinctively go, okay, maybe that's what it's supposed to be like, but I'm not all those other things that they don't relate to. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And do you think that those are the guys that, I'm thinking about Jordan Peterson and the books that he's written. He's clearly connected with, you know, a whole bunch of guys. I'm never quite sure whether to say swathe or swath. I think there's some differences in that, but a swath of guys, a bunch of guys who just, it's as if they have lacked a father figure or good guidance, and suddenly in comes this guy who is very much tell it like it is, full of imperatives, and people have really responded to big time. There's just been an explosion that's really caught everybody by surprise. To what extent? I mean, there's a lot of imperatives in your book as well. Very, very challenging ones, very encouraging ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on. What were you going to say?
Well, I hope it's wisdom. Now, there's only 6. I mean, he gets 12. I'm like, his IQ is double mine. It all works out. I really did want to give decisions that guys can make rather against what's concrete. I want the book to actually be a blessing. It's not a theoretical thing. It's not an academic thing. That's an easy direction for me to go to. Just keep it kind of an academic. Like, we need a construct here. Like, no, this is how I think you actually live it out. I know it takes some audacity to do that. There's going to be people behind me cleaning this room too, which is nice, and I welcome.
That's fine. Maybe we
welcome them. They're very nice. It just happens to be. We probably should see how she responds to it, but I'm actually trying to say, like, I know I'm 52. At some point, in as much as I can self-deprecate and say, well, what do I have to offer? I'm no expert. Well, I'm not an expert, but maybe I do have something to offer. Maybe I actually have learned some things. And that's what Sherry, my producer, was saying. You know what? You do. Yeah, I've seen your family. You're not the only one by a long stretch, but I see how secure your daughter is with you and how they enjoy you, and your wife as well. Like, I see this really well-functioning situation. So maybe you do have something to say. And then, again, seeing all the deconstruction going, I'm like, well, let me take a shot at it, at least show what I'm aiming for. And maybe that'll be a blessing to people. Because if you just have all the pieces to the puzzle, but you don't have the box top, you never really know what you're supposed to be shooting for. And I honestly feel like that's a lot of guys. That's maybe why Jordan Peterson, I'm sure that's a big part of it. Like, just give me something.
Yeah, that feeds into the question. To live a life that isn't meaningless and doesn't feel purposeless, you have to know what you are for. What's your function? What is a man for?
Right.
And that's you go straight into answering that question, obviously. And you have a particular answer because you're a Christian believer. You have a very distinctive answer. What are men for?
Yeah. Well, I take the shot, as you guys know, I take a shot at saying, look, Adam was given a specific job, and it's the keeper of the garden. And Eve is not given that job. Not that she can't do things, like she can, and we know women can do things, but this was Adam's assignment, what he was made for. And so I kind of explore what that actually is. It's not just a protective thing. It is protecting this garden. But if you think what somebody who's gardening is, or keeping a garden, like you're creating order from chaos. You're providing a place of safety for species that wouldn't thrive in the wild.
One thing you picked up on with Adam, Brant, which I don't think I'd ever really noticed before, is the passivity of Adam in that moment. So I'd always thought, as you did, I think, that when Eve was busy reaching out for the fruit, that he was off somewhere else in the garden, minding his own business. He was miles away. He didn't know what was going on. But as you make clear from the text, I mean, it seems to imply pretty strongly he's standing right there. But he doesn't reach out to stop her reaching out. He doesn't refuse the fruit or any of that. It's all just like, he's just right there, presumably just checking out what's going on. Possibly even lying down, as you say in the book. So that's an extraordinary thing.
This is what I hadn't really noticed before, is how he also has opportunities to kind of make good, or at least to not make it so bad. So he failed to intervene when the fruit was being offered and taken. He then ate, and he didn't have to. He then could have owned up, but actually his amazing plan for when God comes is, hey, we should hide, because that's going to work with an omnipresent, omnipotent being. And I'm just imagining them crouching behind a hedge, and it's just pathetic, isn't it?
It is. And then the blaming, which you have to give him some credit, just as people who traffic in words, as all three of us do, for the word economy of being able to blame Eve and God in like one sentence. I mean, that's amazing. So I point out that he's waxing poetic about Eve, like moments before, after she's given to him as a gift, and then it's flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. It's literally a poem. And then when he's in trouble, it's that woman you gave me. like I'm blaming you and I'm blaming her. I mean, that's quite a pivot.
I mean, I'm laughing,
Yeah.
but entire fall of man for thousands of years, ruin, misery, evil, disease, war, pestilence. Do you know what I mean? But that's what was so devastating about reading that again. I was just thinking, well, if that's where my passivity as a man, as a father, as a husband, ultimately tends, that is a real slap in the face, a good slap in the face, but a slap in the face nonetheless. Because I think we don't often think of our passivity in those terms. We just think of it as, well, it's not really okay. So maybe it's not doing something, but it's not like, it's kind of neutral. You know what I mean? Because I'm not doing anything, but actually, yeah, it's not.
Right. So it feels like it's not toxic masculinity because you're not being domineering. You're certainly not being that, which is good. You don't want to be domineering. Like that's not the point of masculinity either. And then but there's another toxic, isn't there? Like there's this toxic passivity. And when I've talked to people I know who are family counselors, they say they run into the passive male way more than the domineering male. Way more. Like he's checked out. It's just yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear. And that makes the wife in that case have to step up in so many ways. It's incredibly stressful for her, and she learns to resent him, and there's a contempt that builds in the marriage too. But he can be like, well, I don't abuse anybody. It was like, yeah, but you've missed the point. Like, so I do like this image of keeper of the garden because it is an active one, but again, it's life giving for the people around us. It's not a dominating one.
Yeah. It's so easy, isn't it, to draw the wrong opposite. So men being aggressive is not intrinsically a good thing, but the opposite of aggressive isn't passive. You know, that's not, they don't quite link there, do they? And actually we're looking for men to be, to lead, but not to be aggressive. I mean, they're in some ways completely different things.
Well, but I would say too, like, I think there's a time to be aggressive, right? I mean, so it's what is the big picture? What's the rubric for win? And I would say it's to defend the vulnerable. I think that's it. Like, and I think women understand this and respect the heck out of it, and they intuitively know that that's what we're for. And I said that with regard to like younger guys reading this. I'm like, it is true that if you embody this stuff, if you are actively engaged in making people feel secure around you, women will find you more attractive. That is a fact. They may not think you're hot. I have no idea, but it's like more attractive than you were when you were being passive. There's no question about it. And I think we have no better example right now. You know who the hottest guy on the planet is, don't you? Like right now?
I'm guessing. Yeah.
I mean, women are going wild. He's 5'7", and he's an average-looking guy by all accounts prior to the war. But Zelensky is the heartthrob of the globe. Why? It's because he's like, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay behind, and we're going to protect these homes and women and children out first. We're protecting. I'm not leaving. And women intuitively are like, that's incredibly attractive. This was a guy who was not, I mean, I know he was an actor and stuff, but he is not a male model type guy.
A character actor is how we
sure enough
refer to him. Yeah.
Oh no, he was a comedian, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Comedians are normally ugly.
I mean,
yes, he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but how instructive is that though? Like, even women who would say that I don't even believe in gender differences or whatever, they still find it attractive. They still intuitively know that there's something really right about this. So there is a point where it's like we are given strength for a reason, and we do occasionally may have to use it, but it's in the context of being the keeper of this garden where you're protecting these vulnerable blooms and species within this garden. So I think Zelensky's a really good example of that.
I'm pushing against an open door here, but I'm going to talk about Tom Bombadil briefly. I've just listened to a book by C.R. Wiley on Tom Bombadil, and what on earth that's all about. Because that's the character who's cut out of the movies because he doesn't actually make any dramatic difference to the plot. What on earth does this guy represent? And C.R. Wiley makes a very, very good case that he is the master. I think Goldberry calls him a master. So he is the master of nature, but he doesn't need to possess it and own it like Sauron does. and he's not affected by the ring. And he, in a way, Tolkien's showing a picture of this is what dominion kind of looks like, as opposed to domination and repression that you get from Sauron. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So Tom Bombadil is this kind of slightly annoying, a little bit sing-song kind of guy, but actually he's really tough. No one can defeat him. He's got moves, and one of his things is he's a master, but he's not a dominator.
Well, I am seething right now with anger that you didn't tell me this before I finished the book, because that could have been like 6 chapters. Like that's awesome. That really is awesome. I have never thought about that. I have wondered the same thing, and I knew that there was discussion about that. But that makes total sense. He's enjoying this garden that he's in, and he's not trying to dominate everything. Like that's, and he's a safe place.
Yeah.
I mean, his place is literally safe. Like, so, wow, that's interesting.
Hey, we got to Tom Bombadil, so it's already. Good night, everyone. We're done.
Just tuned in. I just feel I need to say we've been talking about Lord of the Rings in case you weren't working out what was going on there.
Okay.
Which
that's true. That's a good point.
Anyway, so it's interesting you say that women instinctively respond to that when they see that in a man, even if they are not necessarily standing up for traditional masculine values on the face of it. Deep down, something.
I know they do.
Yeah. And for men as well, right? I mean,
100%. I think so. No, I think so. Men are, since we are confused sometimes, we think, okay, that guy's jacked and he's got a bandolier of bullets and he can work it. We like, oh, cool. There's something, but we're missing something that we do respect more, which is a purpose. Like, what's the point of that? So I saw this poster, and I mentioned this like right off the bat in the book. When I was a freshman in college, like we had this men's house. It was like Christian guys at the University of Illinois, and there was an analogous women's house across the street. Still is. But they gave us a tour, so we go through all the girls' rooms there. In every single girls' room, it was the same poster. I was like, what the heck? And I remember joking about it, like, holy smokes, did they hand this out to everybody? Well, it turns out it's the best-selling poster of all time, still to this day. And I don't know if you guys have seen it. You probably have. I'm sure you have, whether you recognize it or not.
I've got it on my wall.
It's called L'Enfant. So it's this guy with no shirt on. I thought you were going to tell me that you're the guy that posed for it, so I didn't know. But
he's the baby.
Yeah. So that's the thing, though. It's a guy with no shirt on holding a baby, and I know the guy is good looking or whatever, but he's not that jacked. And there's a million male models in the world. Like, it could have been anybody, but the point was the girls were like, it's not the guy though. He's cute. It's the way the baby is looking at him. Like, that's interesting. And this is the best selling poster of all time. So more than 5 million posters. Women love the way the baby is looking at this guy, and they find that deeply, deeply attractive. And I remember taking note at the time as a guy who had no girlfriends and no hope, really, like, there's something deeply resonant for females cross-culturally, I'm guessing, sure enough, it's true, that think that is what a man is for at the deepest level, and they're drawn to it. And I trust their judgment, to be honest with you.
We should probably be clear, though, that this book is not a pickup guide, because at the moment it sounds like if you want to attract women, then you need to be like this. But it is really significant that this is attractive to women, and most men, other men, feel threatened by it, and they sort of kind of step away. Or
so what? That's what I was going to say.
It is.
Sorry,
it is, and it's not a pickup. It's not a pickup guide at all. And I'd be the last person, honestly. I joke about it. I have no idea how to flirt to this day. It's a joke with me and my wife. Like, it's an overt. I'm going to now attempt to flirt, and then I, wink or something. I'm the least guy, but it's so instructive. I did another thing, you guys, where I would speak. I've done this several times with like high school assemblies or whatever, or college people or adults. But I would show pictures of guys from the news. It might be they're pulling a a child out of a car that's on fire, or there's a Japanese soldier carrying a older woman out of a village who's in trouble, or people rescuing people from a helicopter, guys pulling kids out of the water. Okay, they're all normal looking dudes, and they're all like different ethnicities and whatnot from different parts of the world. Just normal. Some of them are a little portly, some of them tall, some short, some just normal guys. And I would show these clips, just go, oh, that's interesting. And then I say, hey, ladies, by the way, are those guys attractive? And there is a visceral, immediate, univocal response of yes. And I'm like, guys, take note of something, because and I'll go back, I'll rewind through these photos. Like, look at these guys. None of them are Hollywood. They look like normal guys. And did you hear the response? There's something they intuit about what we're made for that tells you about your purpose in life. I believe that that's true. So even though this is not a pickup thing, but there is something that we should gain from that. It's like your own wife telling you, I find it really attractive when you stand up for us. Like, you should take note of that and go, well, maybe she deeply understands what my purpose is here. That really helps me with my purpose.
I was always told in the cultural hermeneutics class back at Trinity, which was something that Professor Kevin Van Hooser did, he always said, if you want to understand a cultural trend, follow the money. And it made me think of that when you talked about that poster being the biggest selling poster. So on the one hand, women are said to be saying one thing, but then follow the money. Okay, they're buying posters like this, or they are turning out in their millions to go see 50 Shades of Grey, which is also very, very revealing about what perhaps is lacking in some men. Not saying that that is the good way to go, but it's just very revealing. Mm-hmm. The other thing is with men, I think the same thing applies. I think there's a similar thing going on there. There are men who are deeply, deeply passive, and yet they are absolutely obsessed with games like Call of Duty or World of Warcraft, games which involve, cultivating teams and going after goals and protecting the innocent and all of that kind of stuff, which their hearts just go out to. And you make this point in the book. Again, it seems to me, it's frustrating, isn't it? That in a way we've got a generation of guys whose hearts are built for that, and they know it and they love it, and it's all being basically squandered on two-dimensional pixels instead of actual real life.
Right. Well, what hurts for me is that I'm that guy. Like, that's my bent. I really like video games. And I can throw myself into them. I can play 16 straight hours and then think, oh my gosh, did the sun go down and then back up? And then I didn't even go to the bathroom. Like, I get it. And the problem is, it's easier to level up. It's easier to get things done more quickly. You get a dopamine hit. You feel like you're doing something, even though you're not. You get the hit like you've really accomplished something. And I understand that appeal. It's hard for real life to compete with that. But I'm trying to speak to the larger thing. I'm telling guys, like, you don't want to turn 75 or 80 and look back and thought, I just spent my life sitting in a chair or having virtual experiences. I don't think you want that. The other thing I'm trying to tell guys too, it's very easy for us to say, well, what if I do that? Am I really hurting anybody? Like, what if I just shut myself in? I have my online pornography. I have my online relationships. I have my online games. And I don't really venture outside. As long as I'm not hurting anybody else. I'm like, you are hurting everybody else because we needed you. Like, there is a purpose. You have a purpose. We needed your set of skills. We needed you to become maximally you with your personality and the things that God has given you. We needed you to grow up. We needed you to become someone that was life-giving to other people, and you could have, but you didn't show up. Like, we should at least realize that that's something to be feared. Like, that's scary to think you could wake up at 70 or 80 and go, oh my gosh, I never showed up. And we're on the precipice for a lot of guys that is a very real live issue for an awful lot of people. I'm not dissing video games. I'm just saying, honestly, they're so fun. And relationships are so much more difficult. And we guys tend to go places where we feel competent.
Yeah.
So it's hard for real life to
video
compete with
games
that.
are awesome. And
I really enjoyed your message for Jake. I really enjoyed your message for Jake that you using as an example, like, a basement computer games player. And actually, it was such a nice contrast to, 20 years ago, it was Mark Driscoll yelling at guys like that. You're a joke. What's the matter with you? Don't you want a nice wife? Don't you want to do this? And it's kind of the yelling approach, which, works on some. They find that kind of invigorating. But actually, I thought your appeal, which was like, man, we need you out here. God's given you some gifts and abilities, and we kind of need you. It's much more inspiring. And I don't think a lot of guys maybe feel that, because there is a big kick against how a lot of men have behaved historically over decades and centuries. It's like, just stay in the basement,
totally,
and we don't want to ever hear from you again. It's actually, no, it's not. We need you guys.
Well, and gentleness gets a bad rap, and I try to redeem that in the book too. Like, this is a part of the gardening picture, the cultivating picture, is gentleness. I mean, Jesus is described in I think it's Isaiah, like he won't even break a bruised reed. He won't put out a smoldering wick. He describes himself as gentle in heart. Like, so there's absolutely, that is often missing from that flexing manhood thing that can happen in Christianity. Again, I think a lot of it's a pushback to where we have failed, but we want the whole picture. I do think this gentle keeper of the garden idea is fruitful. I don't mean there's no pun intended, but I think it is a fruitful word picture, and I because it's biblical, I really do believe in it.
Dig down a little bit on that, because I think a lot of people, when they hear you talk about gentleness, will be equating that with a kind of passivity, a kind of a sort of a quietness, maybe a timidity. What is distinctive, do you think, about the sort of gentleness that we see in Jesus and we see in the Bible that is distinct from what a lot of people go, oh yeah, well, I'm like that? Because I wouldn't say boo to a goose. I'm gentle. Are you?
Yeah. Well, he clearly Jesus's gentleness includes telling people what's what, like people who are in positions of influence and have, he's very honest. But I think the gentleness is these people who feel vulnerable around him feel like they can approach him. I mean, that's kind of amazing, including women, like in that culture, to understand, and you guys do, this, but like in a traditional culture like that, for him to welcome women as he did and to make the woman at the well the first Christian missionary, basically, like that's radical stuff. But I love that people who are on the margins could instantly be like the woman who comes, she's bleeding and embarrassed, and he heals her because she touches his garment, but then I think he calls her his sister in front of everybody. Like, that is like, he's not going to bruise her. He's not going to break her. She's already bleeding and embarrassed. Like, he exalts her. That is a gentleness that I think there's an aggressiveness to that sort of gentleness. Like, that you are so secure, you're not needy, that you're able to do that to people who have no currency in the culture whatsoever. They feel at home with you.
That'll get you into trouble, I suppose. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think we typically think of gentleness.
It really does, and I think yeah. And I think a lot of the flexing preacher, masculine, I ride a motorcycle across the stage thing, which was like a phenomenon several years ago, which I documented. For some reason, there's a bunch of preachers that felt a need to ride a motorcycle on the stage to demonstrate that they can ride a motorcycle. But I think a lot of that flexing thing misses out on the gentleness, the accessibility that little kids would want to play with you, and that women who you don't want anything from would feel at home with you and lift it up and protect it. Like, that's pretty cool.
Cooper and T have words.